Hello there, Australia, and wherever else you might be tuning in from today, welcome to Faith, Culture, Politics in Australia with Mark. If you remember last week, I caught up with Debra Leigh, who's a producer of various documentaries here in Australia covering some pretty important community topics. And in particular, last week we caught up on a documentary called Trevor's Story. And I'm just going to share again the Global Truth Network Rumble page. So you'll see Trevor's Story is one we covered in there. We've got a couple of new documentaries from Global Truth Network there. And also, if you like, I encourage you to follow Global Truth Network on Substack as well for further updates and further film releases as well, short documentaries there. And as you may know, obviously we spoke with Debra Leigh in regards to Trevor's Story last week, but I'm catching up with her today about a couple of new releases of documentaries in regards to the fire ant program in Queensland. And there's actually some explosive revelations coming out in regards to that. And I've got Debra coming on to talk into that with me now. So hello, Debra, and welcome again to the show.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me again. Yes, you're right. We do have so much more information coming out about this fire ant program, which I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to present to your audience. Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. So before we do get stuck into this story, this additional story, which is quite explosive, coming out of Queensland in relation to the National Fire Ant Eradication Program, but I'm wondering if you might be able to just give me a recap of how well received Trevor's story was that we reported on last week.
Yes, thanks, Mark. People were very, very shocked to see Trevor's story. I had a very good response from that. Many people contacting me, even people I know who may not have the time normally to watch these type of issues, films about these types of issues. Even people that normally don't really stand up. They sort of leave it to everyone else to try and fight the battles that we have in our society. Even those people were contacting me saying, "Wow, Deb, this is really terrible. I can't believe this is going on in Queensland, in a free country like Australia." And many people were sort of writing off to politicians and doing things because it was quite a shock to a lot of people who were totally unaware, had no information about this program at all, and were totally unaware that the NFAEP officers, accompanied by our police officers who are meant to protect and serve us, are out there forcing their way onto people's private properties simply because those people said, "No, we don't want our properties to be sprayed with chemicals because we don't know the impacts." So yes, it has been very well received. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, great to hear. And just as a really quick side note, of many people that are watching my show know that I catch up regularly with a really good friend, Dr. Bruce Pay, and he's recently recounted his story about the overreach of just questioning COVID, the times of COVID and the medical processes and all that, and how he feels that obviously he was targeted through that just by speaking out and questioning politicians. So yeah, that's it seems to be almost a normal thing these days, and people become to be aware that if you question government or push back, you tend to get somehow the weight of the government coming down on you somehow. So it's really interesting. We need to keep unpacking these sorts of things.
Absolutely, and I think you're right about that, and I think that's part of why not enough people perhaps are speaking out. But that's exactly why they should speak out, is what I tell people. That's exactly why you should speak out. Because if you allow the government to not only break their own laws and harm the people, which is what has been happening in many areas over the last 5 years in particular, if we allow that to happen and we don't speak up, it will just worsen. So we really need to stand together, and more people need to stand up and speak the truth. And it's only the truth that will stop this. So I do encourage people to please try and work together and stand up against government overreach, and in particular where the government is actually breaking the law, which we have seen many cases of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've documented it very well with, hours and hours of evidence in witness statement and other things. So, and again, I need to reiterate that I'm grateful for the type of work that you're doing and to be commended. So thank you again for all the diligent hard work that you're doing to put all this together for the community to be able to see what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just
Thank you.
wanted to you're welcome. I wanted to lead into what we're talking about because I did mention about explosive revelations coming out. So I did just want to quickly share this and have you talk into it a bit further. But the Ipswich Tribune has recently reported. So this was actually this has got a date of today, and talking about fire ant programs slammed over GMO bait silence. And I'm just going to read the first little bit and then you can talk into it a little bit further, Debra, because you're probably much more involved. But the Queensland government has known for at least a year that fire ants baits being spread across southeast Queensland include genetically modified ingredients, but only admitted it last week. The revelation has rocked Australia's $3 billion organic sector, threatening certification losses and risking the collapse of export-reliant small businesses. So this is an article that's come out. Obviously, there's quite a bit in that article, and people can check that out from themselves. But did you want to have a bit of a talk into that a bit further, based on what you know about it, what you've talked to people and really looked into this in much more detail?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Mark. Look, the reason I think this story came out was on the 25th of August, the National Fire and Eradication Program announced itself on its own website that they're reviewing their treatment approach for managing fire ants on organic properties. And the reason they're doing that is they've confirmed now that the fire ant treatment product used on properties certified as organic under Australian standards, that the product used to target the fire ants may be unsuitable, in their words, because there are two ingredients in the product, soybean oil and corn grit, which contain genetically modified organism material. So they've admitted themselves that these GMO products are in there. The Ipswich Tribunal article indicates that they knew about the soybean oil, some time ago, but they've only now just come out and admitted that both the soybean oil and the corn grit contain GMO material. Now, what is a shock to me is because these things aren't GMO free, they said we have suspended treatment on all known organic properties while we source non-GMO alternatives. And I think I sent you the link for this page as well, Mark, that you could show people perhaps. And they say we're working with organic peak bodies, relevant authorities and organic operators to assess and minimise any impact on certification. Well, it's a bit late now because they've already been spraying these properties, and this could have a huge impact on not just the organic industry here, but the farms that perhaps export these products as well. But the thing that shocks me even more than that is the fact that they say they're suspending treatment on organic properties, but we continue treating non-organic properties. So they're spraying GMOs over the rest of Queensland, just not on the organic farms. But my understanding under the Office of the Gene Technology Regulator is that we have a Gene Technology Act, and I've sent you that link as well to their website. And it clearly says under the Australian Government Department of Health, Disability and Ageing on the page about the Office of the Gene Technology Regulator, the OGTR. There's a page, how we regulate genetically modified organisms. And if you scroll down, it says, they've got the Gene Technology Act 2000. If you scroll down a bit, it actually says clearly the main features of the Act: prohibition of all dealings with GMOs unless authorised. So clearly these products have not gone through the proper process of the OGTR assessing, looking at risks, looking at the impacts, environmental impact studies. And we know that this program has not had an environmental impact study because people wrote to various, I can't remember the name of the person, which government minister was involved, but I know that people did write, concerned Australians wrote to people and did ask, where is the environmental impact study? And the response from the government was, oh no, we don't need to do one because it's not, I think they only need to do it if it's a mining site or something like that. So no, we don't need to do one. I mean, that's unbelievable to me that they can spray this much chemical around southeast Queensland without an environmental impact study. So I'm just putting two together here and assuming, well, if there's been no environmental impact study and they've only just now discovered that these are GMO products, clearly they haven't gone through the OGTR processes and they're not authorised. So why is it that the government is continuing to spread unauthorised GMO products all over southeast Queensland? I mean, when I saw that announcement in last week, I assumed that would just immediately put a stop to all the baiting straight away, because now that they've admitted that there are GMO ingredients in there, I just assumed, right, they're going to have to stop all that while they go through the process of properly assessing this now through the OGTR. But no, they're still going. And in fact, just today, I saw more people on Facebook posts saying that the officers have broken into their properties and jumped their fences and gone and started spraying their properties with the baits. I mean, this to me is so shocking. I just cannot believe that. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that the government officers are breaking laws of our country, and yet no one's stopping them and no one's holding them to account. So look, again, I'm not a lawyer, but to me, I see a lot of lawsuits coming very thick and fast over this, because this is pretty shocking in my opinion. Perhaps I'm wrong, but as I said, I'm just going off the information that's publicly available, and it does seem to me that this announcement about the GMO ingredient should have stopped the baiting in its tracks. Not to mention the other reasons that we point out in the films, that they're not working anyway. The experts say that the process they're going through is likely spreading the fire ants, and the people on the ground are saying the same. And you'll see in these next couple of films that we're about to show you now, you'll see some of the evidence to back up what I'm saying at the moment about how the program that the NFAEP is running is more likely based on the evidence on the ground and the experts who study this. Based on all of that evidence and information, it appears that they're actually spreading the fire ants, not eradicating them. So you'll see that in the films in a bit more detail.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, like you said, it's massive. We're talking about 880,000 hectares of southeast Queensland, and it's spreading apparently. And we talked about, and people will see that, watch the documentaries, obviously. Where, when you have storms and runoff and everything else like that. I mean, there's obviously been concerns raised with the Murray-Darling Basin and that, and the outflows from when you have massive storms. I mean, that all impacts. And when you're spraying or baiting, thousands and thousands of hectares. When they don't need to be is the point we're making here. Is a lot of the properties don't actually have fire ants. It's just preposterous. But this whole GMO thing is just mind blowing, because again we're kind of in the know with people like Julian Gillespie and others talking about the concerns around the countermeasures used during the COVID era, and massive concerns around that. So this GMO stuff, many more people in the public need to learn and be aware of this happening, because a lot of people just don't know that their food supply and other things are being affected by products like this. So this is why it's so important to raise awareness, right?
Exactly. And also, if you can put those couple of links that I sent you in your show today as well, Mark, because if people read through some of those articles, some of the other concerns are about the bees. I mean, are the bees eating this corn grid? There's certainly evidence to say they are. And that means once it gets into the bees, I mean, then who knows what the ongoing impacts are once the bees are contaminated with this GMO product, because then they're going and pollinating all of the rest of our plants and food and everything. So that's really the people who are trying to save the bees are very concerned about this. So there's just impacts everywhere. There's the bees, there's the environment, there's the waterways, there's the people's own properties and their right to have healthy GMO-free food. There's destroying people's businesses, destroying people's livelihoods. I mean, I could go on. There's pets dying. I could go on. I've got so much information because so many people are approaching me now with this information. And this is real information on the ground that people are experiencing daily. And yet people in government bureaucratic offices are sitting there going, no, it's okay. We know what we're doing. Just trust us. In fact, they're not even saying just trust us anymore. They're now saying, look, we don't care if you trust us. We're going to force ourselves onto your properties anyway with police if you don't let us. I mean, it's gone a step, well, it went a step too far a long time ago, but it's gone an extra step that to me is really quite shocking. So.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the
sorry,
thing is that yeah, you go.
So just one other thing I wanted to say. You said before that, on a lot of these properties, there aren't any fire ants. On most of these properties, they're poisoning, there aren't any fire ants. It's not just a lot. I'm not saying there aren't fire ants out there. And for all those people who do have them and that where they are a problem, I feel for you, and I know that they can be a real problem. Absolutely. But the issue too, which I haven't really covered in these films, but I will in future, is that most of, or not most, but a lot of properties where people do have the fire ants and they do have a problem, the government are not coming out to help them. Instead, they're going to all the places where there aren't fire ants as a preventative and spreading all of this poison. Now, that to me doesn't make any sense. Why would you not go to the people who've got the problem and kill there? And also, again, it shows in one of the films that you're about to see, and I have yet to confirm this is always the way they do it, but one of the farmers did ask the NFAEP officer, well, what do you do when you see a nest? How do you treat it? And he said they put the baits over them. Well, the way the baits work, the baits aren't killing them. I think most people think of bait, they take it back to their nest and they die. These baits are growth regulators, which in itself is a little horrifying as well when you've done no environmental impact study. Now, what the growth regulator does, it doesn't kill the ants. It stops them developing to the next stage to become full ants. So what basically happens is over time, because the larvae is not developing, and I don't know the exact technical process, but basically they don't become ants. The nest eventually, as the ants die off, they're not being replaced, and that's what destroys the nest. Is eventually over many weeks there's no more food for the queen ant, so the nest dies off and the queen dies off. So that takes weeks. So even when they're going in and disturbing all these nests with baits, how do we know that that's not just causing the queen to fly away to another and create another nest? I mean, I'm not claiming to be a technical person or an ant expert or anything like that. I'm just using common sense. Like most Australians out there, we're just applying some common sense, adding that to what we're actually seeing on our own properties and in our own environment. And we're trying to say to the government, this is causing significant harm. Please stop it, and please let's reassess. And yet, largely, the people are just being ignored by the government. And that's the most shocking thing of all. We've elected these people to represent us, to serve us, and yet they're just ignoring us, like we don't matter. So Anyway, I'll stop there because I know we want to get into the film. So as I say, I could probably talk about this for quite a while, but I think there's some of the key points I just wanted to get out today.
Yeah, and there's lots to talk about, and the unfortunate thing is obviously we're trying to do our best to get the message out. 80% of the population still don't get access to the type of stuff we're talking about. So, my recommendation is to everybody that resonates with the work that Debra's doing or anything like you see in these documentaries, is ultimately the key thing is sharing them on and talking to your neighbours, because we still have 80% of the population, unfortunately, that still listens to mainstream sources, and ultimately what we're trying to do, obviously, in the alternative media space is give these community messages out. And the only way we can do that is by you helping to spread the information to do so. So, Debra, I just thought then we'd give just a quick, if you wanted to, maybe just a quick intro or overview of Shattered Dreams, because we're going to play Shattered Dreams for the audience now, and just wondering whether you just want to talk into it now. That's been released on your Global Truth Network Rumble as well. It's there to access to people. And I just need to reiterate, if you're following along on this stream and you're watching this conversation with Debra and myself, we're obviously going to play the documentaries as well. But what I encourage every viewer to do is jump off. You can stay to the end, but jump on the Global Truth Network site and actually share the link from there, because it's really important that we bring awareness around the work that Debra's doing. So happy for you to, obviously, I'd love for you to hang around to the end here, but my intention is to get the word out, the amazing work that Debra's doing with the documentaries on Global Truth Network. So please share that widely. Don't just watch it, please share widely. So did you want to just give a quick overview of Shattered Dreams before we start running
Sure. It? No problem. So Shattered Dreams is about just one story of one family who have a nursery in the Gold Coast hinterland, and basically the government overreach with this fire ant program has destroyed their health, their business, their ability to continue, to the point where they're now selling up and leaving Queensland. I mean, this is quite shocking. The reason I wanted to tell this story is because people need to see the real world impact of what these government programs are having, and not just on the individual people, but on the products that they're producing and selling. And, you know, it's affecting all of us is really what I'm saying. So this is just one man's story, which I felt was important to tell. But you know, we do try to, again, I always just try to report the facts, and this is his story in his words. And I've put a few additional facts in there just to help people understand some of the things he's talking about. So I hope that the viewers can really understand that this is such an important issue, and we really do need to share this information.
Yeah, excellent. So I'm going to play Shattered Dreams now. Now, Deborah is going to stay around for the completion of the two documentaries. In between this one and the other one, I will just introduce the next one. But if by all means, stay around, watch them here on the platform, and Deborah will speak into them towards the end and give a bit of a summary and a close as well. So, so happy for you to obviously watch these with me during this period of time. But if you're going to share it, please share it off the platform from Global Truth Network. So we'll catch up soon, Deborah. I'll just play these now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Enjoy, everyone.
Wesley Trevor has 50 years of experience in the plant industry, as he grew up potting plants in his parents' plant business. At the age of 18, he pursued his passion by starting his own plant nursery. Then in 1996, he and his wife bought a property in the beautiful Gold Coast hinterland in southeast Queensland, where they developed their family business, Spectrum Plants. For almost 30 years, 4 generations of his family have worked at Spectrum Plants, potting and selling landscape and indoor plants. The family is passionate and proud that for decades they operated a low-chemical plant nursery. Their nursery is on 7 acres of land, and 1/4 to 1/3 of their business used to be the sale of spray-free edible plants. Like any business, they had their challenges along the way, including most recently an isolated weather event around Christmas 2023, dealing with the aftermath of a devastating storm on Christmas night and flooding which followed on New Year's night in 2024. Their business has been slowly recovering from this weather event for the last 2 years. But the biggest challenges in the nursery's history arose when the fire ants came to town. To be clear, however, the challenges are not fire ant infestations, as the nursery does not have any fire ants. Rather, they are the controls, requirements, restrictions and audits of the National Fire Ant Eradication Program, the NFAEP, which have created the greatest challenges in the almost 30-year history of their family business. Let's hear about the challenges Wesley is facing in his own words.
My passion is actually my family. We also love animals and growing organic veggies and doing really simple things back to nature. Yeah, I love growing plants. That's been in the family for 10,000 years is the joke. We've grown plants for that long. We love growing all sorts of things, particularly edibles. We love growing, you know, perfect, fresh, chemical-free produce. It hit the news 20 or so years ago, but didn't actually affect us until the spread of fire ants got down to us. That was more than 5 years ago now. Of course, now it's down past the border, so it's spreading at quite a rapid rate. First of all, you need to understand the rules, which is a lot of reading and a lot of absorbing and understanding. And there's different rules for different situations and different scenarios, whether you're dealing with plants or mulch. The rules change quite often, which makes it even more complicated. And sometimes you're not informed when the changes happen. But once you've understood the rules, you then have to spend quite a bit of money on infrastructure, such as chemical treatment units and the purchase of chemicals and bays to do it in. You need to get someone in the office who can handle the paperwork. That's quite a major task. And then there's the actual chemical treatment, which is major. On this property, we have 100,000 plants on 7 acres. We have 1 million litres of potting mix in pots. We have to chemically treat that every 28 days with 20% of the volume of the potting mix. So if there's 1 million litres of potting mix, we have to use 200,000 litres of pesticide every 28 days. That means I have to work 7 days a week, 10 hours a day applying pesticides. It's humanly impossible. So I do a combination of the two. I mix pesticides in with the potting mix and I chemically treat over the top. If you're dealing in materials like potting mix or mulch, you have the choice to turn them every 21 days so that fire ants don't build up in them. Their preference is you mix a slow-release chemical with the potting mix or the mulch so that when it leaves the property, it's got a toxic level of pesticide in it that an ant can't survive in. You've probably got to read 10 pages to actually understand the legislation. But in a nutshell, that's my understanding of the mulch situation. In terms of the plants, because ants can exist in pots, even though it's very rare, it doesn't really happen, you have the choice of mixing a pesticide in with the potting mix or a chemical root drench over the top every 28 days. So the chemical that we mix in, depending on the concentration of the chemical we add, it can last between 6 months, 12 months, or even 18 months. The problem then is that everybody who touches the potting mix in the next 12 months is exposing themselves to chemical. And you can't work in 35-degree heat and wear a full safety suit. You can't physically do it. So this is the liquid form of the chemical. Venom is its brand name. It's bifenthrin is the chemical that we use. That's the chemical that's recommended to kill fire ants. And it's a repellent. So if it's being used on a property and ants come in, they'll sense it and leave. That pile of mix there has a bag of MaxGuard mixed in with it, which is powdered bifenthrin, which releases slowly over a 12-month period. So if you make skin contact with that dirt, you're absorbing chemical. And we grow in that chilies, blueberries, raspberries, citrus trees, seedlings. They're all toxic. I can't sell a plant with blueberries on it because the fruit on the blueberries is toxic and can't be eaten by humans. And the whole idea of growing a fruit tree in your backyard is it's chemical free. So they have completely destroyed the best part of my business, which is edible food crops. We were supplying edible food crops to people who want to grow organically in their backyard and not have pesticides. And now it's in the potting mix, it's getting treated every 28 days. And the people take home the plants and it's infected with it. We can't eat anything on the property. The rule is we actually have to remove the fruit off the tree before we sell the tree. And chilies, you sell chilies when they're in fruit. That's what makes people buy them. The beautiful coloured chilies hanging off the tree. We legally have to rip it off and throw it away. So my chili sales are gone. And blueberries and raspberries, which I think everybody should have in their backyard. It's ancient history. There are no longer any animals on my property. The only thing that survives this is cane toads, and they're sick. They look sick. The dam used to have turtles, eels, fish, ducks. It used to be healthy. There's nothing left now. It's just water and runoff from the nursery. The big bottles are $400, so you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars worth of chemicals there. And that basically is a 6 to 12 months supply of what we use in the nursery. The enforcing of the rules, and I'm trying to live by the rules, has basically destroyed the financial viability of our business. Our turnover has fallen to $1 million a year with the economic situation. That sounds like a lot of money, but I'm paying $400,000 a year in wages. You throw $100,000 worth of chemicals and paperwork and on top of that, and we're not making money. It's basically the fire ant situation has absorbed my profit margin. So the government expects me in root drenching to use 2.4 million litres of pesticide a year. Every 28 days, I've got to use 200,000 litres. And that's the legislation. And you can't apply 2.4 million litres of pesticide to 7 acres without there being some contamination of the environment. I'm spending the majority of my life doing chemical treatments for ants that aren't there. I believe it's destroyed my health and it's impacted the family so heavily that we actually want to sell the business and leave Queensland. So overall, including the time to apply the chemicals, which is the major cost, we're looking at 100 grand a year. I'm spending close to 30 grand a year on the purchase of chemicals. The application of them is a major part, like it is the major part. But my concern more than anything is my health and the health of my family and the surrounding environment. I have the symptoms of early onset dementia, and I've been brain scanned for Alzheimer's and dementia because my brain's not functioning anywhere near where it should. I've been to the best doctors, and a professor of brain health has told me that exposure to toxic chemicals is the #1 cause. He believes the #1 cause of my problems. And it's to the point where I'm embarrassing myself because I can't finish sentences and I can't function the way I used to. It's actually impacting the decision-making of the business and the nursery. So there was a nursery which implemented pesticides in the mix, and the owner warned the staff about what was coming and bought all the correct safety gear. And by the end of the week, all of the members of the staff had headaches and they quit en masse. The entire nursery staff just walked out and refused to work for the guy anymore because of the pesticides. He then gave up the pesticides and then went back to using them because the root drenching was just too stringent. He couldn't do it.
What are you trying to achieve when you follow those rules? What's the goal?
To not be harassed by government is the reason why we do what we do. The government provides no form of financial assistance or subsidy at all. At all. In fact, the opposite. They expect me to pay for all that, and they fine me thousands of dollars if you don't fill out the paperwork correctly. Basically think the only solution is to give up and walk away. My wife wants to move south out of the fire ant zone so we can live a life that's free of chemicals. And it's not the fire ants I'm running from, it's the chemical treatment, and it's the government attitude. It's the bureaucrats that continually harass us. We've had 100 inspectors on our property in the last 5 years. That's harassment. You know, that includes council, RSPCA and fire ants, but 100 people in 5 years? Come on. So initially I was visited by the fire ant team, and they were very friendly and very pleasant. And they said, we're here to help, we're on your side. And over the period of a couple of years, they've become more militant, and they do the recording around the neck deal. Their attitudes just change. They don't, like, if you question them, if you argue back, you're gone. I mean, I've had nurserymen say, oh gosh, did you argue back? You can't do that, they'll fine you, you know. You've got to be nice to them or they'll screw you. To be honest, they're not trained very well. Some of them don't know the legislation, and every time you get a different person, you get a different answer. I mean, you know, I had one lady say I had to turn the mulch. I had another guy say you haven't got to turn the mulch, you've got to mix pesticides with it. We chemically treated around our bush houses. We root drenched the soil around our bush houses because that was a legislation several years ago, and we've been doing it for years. I only found out a few months ago, oh no, those rules changed 6 months ago, you haven't got to do that. And I said, well, why did it change? And they said the science changed. And I was like, oh, I didn't know science changed. I thought science was sort of a hard and fast rule that, you know. So they're getting ideas from America, they're researching, they're getting their own ideas, they're chopping and changing. Different people say different things. It's hard to get an answer. When this situation happened with the mulch, they came down here, I think it was 1 or 2 men and a couple of dogs. They ran the dogs over the mulch, sniffing for fire ants. The bill was $1,100. They are the best paid dogs in the world. I got an $1,100 bill for a man and 2 dogs to run over that mulch and sniff it to see if there are any ants in it. And it didn't need to happen because it doesn't leave the property. We make our own potting mix. It's all in-house. We're not spreading it. And this is what I couldn't get through to them. I'll tell you a funny story, actually. We rang up and said, we've got a fire ant's nest. And they said, oh, we're too busy, treat it yourself. So I treated it myself. And next time we got audited, I said, oh, there was a fire ant nest and I treated it myself. And she wrote me up for not reporting it. It was, seriously. I'm 100% confident we have no fire ants and we're not spreading fire ants. I've had 2 little nests on my property years ago, which I located very early when they were this big. We treated them and they're gone. There's so much chemical in this property, no fire ant would come near it. That's the honest truth. Nothing can survive. The government rules are you have to put 850 mils per 1,000 litres for root drenching. Yeah, which is quite concentrated. I've spoken to pest control guys and they said, that's crazy. Like, that's way over the top. The chemical that's used in baits is the opposite. They go and get it and they take it back to the nest.
The fire ant baits that Wesley refers to are being widely spread within the NFAEP eradication zones across southeast Queensland. The chemicals in the baits are insect growth regulators. Ant workers pick up the bait granules and take them back to the colony where they feed the solid bait to the reproductive adults, workers and young larvae. Due to degeneration of reproductive organs, the queen ant and other reproductive females fail to lay viable eggs and gradually the worker population is reduced. The lack of worker replacement results in colony death as the existing worker ants age and die. Within 3 to 4 weeks, there is substantial colony mortality, and within 8 weeks, the majority of the colony population has been eliminated.
I came across another chemical brand that had a higher concentration of the active ingredient and it was cheaper, and I started using it, and when I got audited, they said, no, that's not approved, you can't use that. It was the same chemical at a cheaper price and I wasn't allowed to use it because it's not in their rule book.
Why is the NFAEP enforcing use of a specific brand of chemical when a cheaper alternative is available?
So these pots behind me are 300 ml pots. They contain 14 litres of potting mix. So I have to apply 2.8 litres of pesticide to each pot. 2 litres plus comes out the bottom. It's bifenthrin. We have to add 850 mils to 1,000 litres. Evidence that I've actually done it so I don't get fined. And you can see that this entire unit is white with pesticide. This machine gets used every day, and as a result, there's a slow, gradual build-up of pesticides on everything. I mean, I wash it down and I do my best, but there's so much pesticide being used that everything just gets caked in it. That's that. Now we start the pump to agitate it, which I don't normally do at 7 o'clock in the morning. Let that agitate for 5 minutes. That stirs all the chemical up. % of 14 litres is 2.8. We've got to fill it up to 800 mils, which is there. So that is 2.8 litres of pesticide. So this pot is 14 litres in volume. 20% is 2.8 litres. If I apply that to there, you'll get a demonstration of what will flow through under normal circumstances. That's exactly the right amount. So this pot, at 20% of 14 is 2.8 litres. I've measured it, I've put it in there, and that's what flowed through. So we've applied 2.8 litres of pesticide to the top. It's basically drenched the root ball, and the excess is flowing through. We've caught the majority of it, and we can now measure it to see how much of the pesticide is actually being used. It flows into the dam, and we recycle as much of that water as we can so it doesn't flow into the rivers. But under heavy rain conditions, that's where it all goes. When it overflows, it all flows down the creek. And there's lots of people downstream, well, not to mention all the animals. There's platypus in that creek, fish, turtles, everything. The amount of pesticide that's being put into the creek is crazy. I mean, it's also breaking environmental rules. If I follow one rule, I break another rule. You know, you can't stop 2 million litres of pesticide from flowing into the creek. You throw stuff like that around it, it ends up in the creek. That's life. So that's the majority of it. Another bucket. Put it in. 1 litre there. So basically 2 litres. So out of the 2.8 that we put in, 2 litres of it flowed through. Totally wasted. Multiply that by 100,000 plants, you've got a disaster. And when I said to the inspector, I said, listen, when we root drench, so much flows through and gets wasted. And she said, oh, you're doing it wrong. I mean, she's probably never root drenched in her entire life. I spend my whole day doing it, and she's never done it. What we do here is we get mulch delivered, and it's tree mulch, and ants are terranians, so they're not in the trees. So the mulch should be free of ants when it arrives. We then push it into piles, and it rots. And in the center of that pile, I've buried a thermometer, it's 90 degrees. Like in the mornings, it's literally steaming. Now, ants can't survive above 48 degrees Celsius. That mixes at 90 degrees. Now, around the edges is not 90 degrees, obviously, and on top, so ants could survive. I chemically treat it to make sure there's no ants. What the legislation is, that I have to turn that entire pile every 21 days. And the turning breaks up the nests and stops any ants from developing. At one stage, I had 500,000 litres I had 500 cubic metres of mulch, and I meant to turn it every 21 days. Well, my little bobcat would take months to turn that much mulch. It was literally impossible for me to do, and that's what I was fined for. And the fact that it doesn't leave the property means it's not spreading ants, so what's the problem? I get another inspector come and he says, you haven't got to turn it, you've got to mix chemicals with it before it leaves the property if you are sending it out. Yeah. There was a rule where when it gets dropped, you can move the mulch within 24 hours because it'll take that long for the ants to get into it. And I have been abiding by that rule. I think that rule's changed because last time I mentioned that to an inspector, he looked at me confused. I've put this in questions to them. How do I deal with this? And I haven't got answers. I've even said if I get rid of the bobcat off the property and I can't turn it, what do I do then? I'll tell you the story of where I live. We had 1 fire ant nest and we called them up and they came and treated it. Next day, incredible service. 6 months later, we called them up again. They found 4 nests. 6 months later, we called them up again. They found 44 nests. 6 months later, we called them up and they said, there's so many nests, we can't treat them all. We can only be here for 1 hour. You're going to have to get us back. And on the other side of the fence, where there's obviously fire ants, they've never been. They can't wipe out fire ants on one property. How can they possibly wipe out fire ants on the whole of southeast Queensland? They'll spend $1 billion and they'll turn southeast Queensland into a toxic waste zone and there'll still be fire ants.
Wesley's observations about fire ants spreading on his personal property each time nests are baited or destroyed by the NFAEP, as well as his observations that there are no longer any animals on his nursery property, does seem to be supported by warnings from Dr. Joshua King, a professor from the University of Central Florida, who is an expert in fire ant eradication. He has written an open letter specifically addressing how the NFAEP is being managed in Australia. Dr. King and his research group have one of the most active, continuously US federally funded research programs in the world, with the specific aims of understanding the biology and ecology of fire ants and how fire ants interact with species in the ecosystems they invade. He brings decades of experience with real-world interactions with fire ants in a variety of natural and human-modified environments. Dr. King points out that no eradication program has ever succeeded in preventing fire ant establishment and spread over larger areas and longer timespans. He then goes on to point out that attempts at eradication and prevention of further invasions by fire ants have not only failed, but the very actions taken to eliminate the fire ant ultimately hastened its establishment and spread. Yet despite these warnings from an expert in fire ant eradication and the experience of many Australians whose fire ant-free properties and businesses have been baited or poisoned, the NFAEP continues to broadbait and/or require the application of chemicals over large areas where there are no fire ants. Dr. King further goes on to say that of particular concern is that the widespread and prophylactic use of toxic broadcast baits may impact non-target ants, that is, other native ants, as none of the bait products in use are fire ant specific. He says that reducing the native ant communities has repeatedly been shown to be a factor in hastening, not slowing, the invasion of fire ants, as the fire ants are especially good at moving into the nests left vacant by the native ants. He also warns that the potential for other non-target impacts on aquatic and terrestrial arthropods and wildlife is not trivial. So in summary, Dr. King says there seems to be little justification for a prophylactic baiting program that has great potential for non-target impacts and that may in fact hasten the establishment of fire ants over time.
So yeah, we've treated that quite a few times, starting about 10 weeks ago, and I don't know why, but they're still alive. They're meant to be dead. We've been given a free bottle by the government, and we've sprinkled it around, and I don't know, we're going to have to do it again. But yep, that's alive. Yep, so that's a typical fire ant nest, a big dirt mound with no holes in it. They're subterranean, they live under the ground. And that nest, if that nest is that high, it's well down, like it's feet down. And it's probably been there for quite a while, but we can't see it because it's underneath so much vegetation. Well, we had animals in this paddock for months, and to be honest, there were 10 nests here. We didn't even know they were here. When we found them, we treated them, we did all the right things, and we got rid of 90% of them. This one's still alive, maybe because it's on the edge. So we would come in every day and hand feed. We had 3 sheep and a goat, and a cow for that matter, and we would hand feed them and pat them, and I would even lie down. When we had a lamb, I would lie down and pat the lamb, and I spent a lot of time in this paddock. This is my relaxation, and I didn't even know there were fire ants in the paddock. It's only when they ate the ground down to nothing and I ran a lawnmower across that I discovered there were ants nests, and that's when we reported them and treated them. But as you can see, we haven't succeeded. They're still active. I mean, we killed the 10 that were out here, but that one's still alive, and there's 2 more up there. I don't know if they're alive or not. Yep. Ants everywhere. Little fellas, just there. It's very interesting because we successfully killed the ones in the middle, so I don't know why we failed there. Now this one is quite high. It's a foot high and it's got grass growing through it. They're hiding amongst the grass, which is what the experts say doesn't happen. And that's with us doing weekly inspections and weekly treatments of ants outside of the zone. These are old nests that I thought we'd wiped out, which we obviously haven't. We did all the right things. We baited around them. We did everything to the book, and they're still there. On the top half of the property, we have our chickens and guinea fowl. And interestingly enough, there's no fire ants on the top half of the property. So my theory is we have organic control of fire ants on half the property because that's where our guinea fowl are, which actually eat meat. They hunt down ants and bugs, and that's why we have them, organic pest control. It's not foolproof enough for the government. The government deals with this issue by blanketing everything in chemicals. It's the crux of the whole problem, is that what the government is doing is not working, and they won't admit that it's not working, and there's side effects they don't even want to look at. I've personally been bitten about 50 times. The bite is insignificant. I've never reacted to it. My kids play barefoot in the backyard all over the place. They get bit and they come in and complain. It's no big deal. We report the nest. We do everything we're meant to do. It's not affecting our lifestyle drastically. Okay, so see that one? He's biting now. See how he's... I can't feel anything, but he's biting me now. Okay, I could just feel something now. Yep, now I can feel it. He's biting me. It's less than a mozzie bite. But there's only one there. Yeah, he's having a good go. Look, So there you go, he's done his thing, he's moving on. So that will probably become a little itchy bump, and it'll last a few days. And I've been bitten 50 times like that. The bite is, I have to stop and focus on it to see if I can actually feel it. But it'll cause minor irritation for a day or so. It's a fraction of a green ant bite. It's less than a mozzie bite.
Wesley's claim that the fire ant sting is not that painful is supported by the Schmidt Pain Index. This article from the ABC confirms that the fire ant sting is far from the greatest pain in the insect world, rating only 1.2 on a scale of 1 to 4, with 4 being the highest pain. The pain from a fire ant sting is less than that of a greenhead ant at 1.5, and far less than even the humble bee, which scores a 2, or the bumblebee and wasps, which score 2.5, bull ants, which score 3, and spider wasps at a pain score of 4. It is therefore understandable that Wesley would rather live with fire ants than being exposed to high levels of chemicals for which we do not know the short or long-term effects on his and other people's health.
In Texas, you go into your shopping centre and there's your rat bait and your cockroach spray and your fire ant bait. And you buy, if you've got fire ants, it's your responsibility. You buy your fire ant bait off the shelf, you go home and you treat it in your backyard if you want to. And that's the way it could happen here. And that's the way it's going to happen in the future. We just have to get there. For me, the chemicals are much more of a bigger problem to our life and happiness and future prosperity and everything, every aspect. The chemicals are far worse than the fire ants. I'm happy to live with the fire ants. I draw a similarity between COVID and fire ants. The government overreacted with regards to COVID and ruined lots of people's lives. Now we live with COVID like it's in every part of day of life. There's people in hospitals with COVID as we speak. It's not on the front page of the paper. We're not shutting down the economy. We're not panicking. It's part of life now. That's the way it has to be with fire ants. Look, to be honest, we've had a fantastic life. We bought this property when we were 26, so we were quite young. We've raised 8 children here and really had a good life, really enjoyed life. The fire ant situation, the legislation, what we're being put through, it's just got to the point where I'm just over it. I can't deal with the stress of having to be audited and go through all the rigmarole and the routines. I've been happy to do the chemical treatment up until when I got fined, and then I just went, oh, this is just too hard. You know, are the government on our side or are they not? You know, that's my question. And we're just ready to move on and do something else in life. What we're going to do, I don't know. You know, you worry about the financial situation, you worry about your ability to cope when you're getting older and start something new, but I don't want to live a life living in a sea of chemicals. My parents are 91 and 93 and I want to live that long. And I don't think I'm going to achieve it the way I'm going now. And that's my genuine concern. I honestly think this is going to kill me. We've loved it. It's the hinterland Gold Coast. It's magnificent. The air is fresh. The birds tweet and the sun rises and the skies are blue. It's magnificent, beautiful part of the world to live. And we've grown organic fruit and veggies, and we've just had a great life. We really have. And we're done now.
Tony Perrott, your role is to fulfil the will of the people. This film outlines harm being caused to people who you have been elected to serve. It has been well over a year since the April 2024 Senate inquiry on red imported fire ants in Australia reported that reluctance to consult and involve industry in the response can only be seen as a disadvantage, given the varied and in-depth on-the-ground knowledge and experience of the agricultural, environment and pest sectors. The report also recommended, among other actions, that you investigate alternate models for delivery to reduce bureaucratic process. Please don't allow bureaucratic process to destroy another Queensland business, as well as the health of Wesley and those handling the chemicals at his nursery and other nurseries within the NFAEP treatment zone. Please listen to the people on the ground when they tell you that the spread of enormous quantities of chemicals on their properties is killing insects, fish, animals and pets, and our beautiful natural environment. It is time for you to meet personally with Wesley and visit his nursery to understand his business and the extent of harm being caused by the NFAEP. It is well past time to address his concerns and review the NFAEP's approach in attempting to eradicate fire ants. To support Wesley and others being harmed by the NFAEP, please send this call to action to Tony Perrott. Don't delay or wait until the fire ant treatment zones reach your property or business. Make your voice heard now. Thank you.
There you go, everybody. You've just been watching Shattered Dreams by Global Truth Network, and I'll just share the site again. Is Global Truth Network on Rumble. You can watch that video in its entirety or share. What I recommend, if you sat through that and it's really resonated with you, is jump onto the Global Truth Network Rumble channel and share that video to your friends or anybody you believe you feel needs to hear that. You can also follow along with further releases of documentaries that Debra is working on through Global Truth Network on the Global Truth Network Substack, on a Global Truth Network there as well. So just bringing Debra back in as well, and just to a bit of a recap on that thing, Debra, and again, thank you for the amazing work that you've done putting that together with others. It was quite, I mean, there was so much in there that there was just so much in there that you could grab and take away and really talk into with so much frustration. But even just one of the points I picked up on is this additional cost to producers, farmers, primary producers, that $1,100 bill to have a dog run over a mulch mound, to have the dog sniff out to see if there's fire ants. You get an helicopter bill for $1,100. I mean, this is just absolute madness, hey?
Absolutely. And look, I think this is one of the major concerns that many businesses have about this program, and you'll see it also in the next film, which I'll introduce in a minute, is that it seems that bureaucrats have put together a program without consulting industry. And in fact, right from the beginning, instead of getting pest controllers in to deal with this fire ant situation when it was first discovered in Brisbane, instead of getting the experts in, I'm not sure who put this together, but clearly there are so many ways in which this program is failing. It's failing the people, and it's failing its intended, objective to eradicate the fire ants. But one of the biggest problems is this, fines and fees and costs. And it's not just a case of, oh, we need to eradicate the fire ants, let's, spray the ants or report the ants when we see them. There's a whole infrastructure of enormous amount of cost and setup for business to comply. And when they miss something or they haven't filled out a form correctly or something like that, instead of the government saying, all right, well, we can see you're doing everything we've asked of you, we'll just let this pass, but, make sure you fill it out right next time. They come up with all these fines and fees and costs, and it's literally crippling businesses. And you'll see that in the next film as well. But more importantly, It's the fact that they're not consulting with the stakeholders. They're not consulting with the businesses on understanding their businesses. As Trevor pointed out, I mean, they want him to do things that just don't make any sense, you know, and also they're asking him to do things that are literally poisoning the environment. And yet they're saying, no, well, you've just got to do that. You know, no one's looking at the broader picture of the environment and where all these chemicals. I mean, you can't put this much chemical all over Australia and not expect that ultimately when it rains and storms and whatnot, that it's going to end up in the waterways. And we know that these chemicals do kill fish and anything in the waterways. So, you know, this lack of engagement coupled with the enormous cost that burden that they're putting on all the businesses is literally crippling businesses to the point where they're going broke. So, and you'll hear more about that in the next film.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous, and it's like I run this program at all costs, and you know we're hearing obviously through Trevor's stories, and this one we just watched this the negative impact on other wildlife, and it kind of reminds me about this whole a little bit, you know, off point a little bit, but around this whole net zero push and renewables is kind of building all these wind farms and solar panels impacting on farms and killing wildlife for that, you know, that concept of for the greater good and you know, just, you know, whatever it takes kind of mentality. And that seems like the same sort of thing going on here.
Absolutely. And that's probably one of the biggest concerns that I have is I've yet to see the actual analysis, if you like, of why they think this is a good idea. What is, you know, I'm not saying the fire ants aren't a problem for people. They can be, absolutely. But where's the analysis that says the approach we're taking is not causing more harm than good? Because everything I've seen and everyone I've spoken to, absolutely, and I'm an accountant, right? So I look at cost benefit and I say, all right, well, what's the cost of doing this and what's the benefit? And one of the main benefits that I have heard in the media, even though I've not seen any documentation or any analysis by the program itself, which I have looked for, one of the main benefits they often say is, oh, if we don't get rid of these ants, it's going to destroy our lifestyle. It's going to destroy the Australian way of life because we won't be able to have barbecues and blah, blah, blah. But it's already just, not the ants, but the program is already destroying so many lives in so many ways. And when you start killing off all of our, you know, natural ecosystem and animals and plants and insects and birds and that are disappearing, well, I think that's much more harmful to our way of life than not being able to have a barbecue, you know. So it just doesn't make, none of it makes any sense. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So a reminder to people to share the documentaries straight from the site. So Global Truth Network, Rumble, as well as the Substack. Now, Deborah, did you want to have just give us a quick overview of the next film that the audience is going to be watching? So Can You Hear Us? Voices of the Lockyer Valley is the next documentary that you've produced as well, that you've directed and helped produce, obviously. And did you want to have a quick talk into that before we play that for the audience?
Yeah, sure, Mark. So just quickly, this is another group in the community who is being severely adversely affected by the program. Again, not by the ants. They don't have ants on their properties. By the program and all of the overreach with the bureaucracy. Now, these are hay farmers out in the Lockyer Valley. And basically, once again, because the government has put all these rules and regulations in place without consulting with the actual farmers, they don't really understand how their businesses work. They don't really understand that these farmers already have, you know, they're dealing with biosecurity issues all the time. They're dealing with all sorts of pests and chemicals and ways of ensuring that their produce is free from any pests. And they've never had an issue, and you'll hear them talk about it, with fire ants in their hay, yet their hay has been classified by the NFAEP in the same bucket, if you like, of other things that may be a risk, such as you know, some other products that may be a risk, possibly, I don't know, I haven't looked into it, but their hay is not a risk, and yet they're being restricted from actually selling their produce. Can you believe that? The government is actually stopping them from selling their produce across the border, or if they do want to sell it, the amount of hoops they have to jump through and all the extra costs and paperwork actually mean that it's not viable for them. They can't sell it and make a profit. And it's literally, again, destroying businesses for no real benefit that anyone can see. And just one last thing I'll comment is you'll see in the film, Jake talks about a proposal he put forward to the government of how this could work without harming the farmers and still achieving the same result. But the government haven't even responded to his proposal. For over 2 years now, he's been putting forward this proposal, trying to speak to people in government about it, speak to people in the program, and they have had a couple of meetings, but no response. No, didn't come back to him afterwards, say, yes, it's a good idea, no, it's not, let's discuss it further, nothing, just silence. So again, another case of hardworking, farmers are the backbone of this country, and we've got hardworking farmers out there who are going broke because of government, not because of the fire ants, but because of the program and the overreach and the paperwork and the costs that the government have enforced on these poor farmers. So please watch this film and support our farmers, because without the farmers, we have no food. This is really important that we support the farmers.
100%. And we've talked before about, funding and that and supporting you. So as we've mentioned before, if anybody is aware or anybody, a philanthropist might be watching, if you want to reach out to Debra through Global Truth Network, if you have the ability to help out, then by all means get in contact and support Debra with her amazing work that she's doing in regards to her documentaries. So let's watch Can You Hear Us? Voices of the Lockyer Valley by Global Truth Network now. We'll see you on the other side of this as well, Debra, to wrap it up.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Although farmers make up only a small percentage of Australians, all Australians rely on our farmers every day. There is no doubt that they are the backbone of our country. Farmers in the Lockyer Valley, Queensland, produce high-quality hay for farms Australia-wide, including top-quality fresh lucerne for racing horse breeders. The life of the Australian farmer is challenging at the best of times, with many challenges being unavoidable due to weather conditions and other factors beyond their control. But when challenges arise due to bureaucracy created by a government program which is meant to serve the farmers, the word challenge takes on a whole new meaning. The latest challenge for farmers has arisen due to the spread of red imported fire ants throughout southeast Queensland. But the fire ants are not the problem, as the Lockyer Valley farmers do not have fire ants in their hay bales. Rather, the farmers are facing financial ruin and unnecessary physical and mental stress due to poor support and communication from the bureaucracy of the National Fire Ant Eradication Program, the NFAEP, a program which was set up to eradicate these invasive ants. Fire ants were discovered in Queensland in 2001 and are believed to have entered via the Port of Brisbane via shipping containers from America. Over the past 24 years, the ants are now thought to have spread to areas spanning over 850,000 hectares of land, including farming areas. The reasons as to why eradication of these ants has not been achieved over that time is unclear, but some point to mismanagement and lack of stakeholder engagement by the NFAEP as possible factors. In April 2024, a Senate inquiry looked at the failings of the program and made recommendations to address the issues identified. Some of the comments included in the inquiry report were that stakeholders have frequently been dismissed by the responsible governments and the NFAEP, which is a disadvantage given the varied and in-depth on-the-ground knowledge and experience of the agricultural, environment and pest sectors. The committee also recommended that the Australian government investigate alternate ways to reduce bureaucratic process, improve independence and transparency, improve public engagement, and improve the delivery of the eradication program. But it is now more than a year since these recommendations were made, yet they still have not been implemented. Jake Holzheimer is a second-generation hay and lucerne wholesaler based in the Lockyer Valley. Let's hear directly from Jake and other farmers in the area who share their lived experiences and ongoing concerns about the approach and lack of communication and support from representatives in government and the NFAEP as identified in the 2024 report.
So my name is Jake Holzheimer. I have a wholesale hay business. I act as an agent for produce shops and dairy farms, the cattle industry, sourcing the products that they require and working with landholders and what they produce. My dad done it for 25 years before I took over in 2015, and I've done it for the last 10 years on my own. So we're based in the Lockyer Valley in southeast Queensland. It's known for producing some of the best crops in the Southern Hemisphere. I probably work with about 15 farmers directly in the Lockyer Valley and speak with many more than that. We become aware of fire ants, I think it was 2014, they said they'd spread to out here. And being the community we are, we had a town hall meeting with the fire ant program officers back then to discuss what we can do to manage the situation and imply the best practices, which it was established most of the practices that we had in place were more than sufficient anyway. But yeah, ever since 2014, we would have loaded millions of bales, sent millions of tonnes across this country, not a single fire ant infestation linked to anything we've sent, never been bitten while loading hay, never been bitten while walking around the paddock. I haven't even seen a fire ant until I went to one of the program functions where they had them in the little containers.
We've had one nest in the since they've started. I've found one nest and we got it treated. No, it wasn't in a panic. It was down near power pole. Well, we don't know where it come from. They brought out sniffer dogs to make, after they treated it, and it was eradicated, gone.
I have seen a nest on the boundary with my neighbour. Yeah, that was treated. And to my knowledge, as I said, I'm always checking our properties, and that has been eradicated.
We have had some farms report one or two nests that they've discovered when they're checking their properties, and straight away they deal with it. They either ring up and request a team to come out and treat it, or they treat it themselves. From my understanding, in 2001, the fire ants were first found at the Port of Brisbane. By 2010, we become aware that they were in the Lockyer Valley. From 2014 to 2023, nothing was really changing. We were free to trade, do what we wish, as long as obviously we were responsible. And then 2023, they discovered fire ants on the border or just over the border at Tweed Heads below the Gold Coast. From there, it became this big scene of misleading headlines, I suppose, that really impacted the industry. The story was a lot like killer fire ants in hay. Hay's a high-risk transporter of fire ants, human-assisted movements. You'd have photos of horses with a rash on their face and then titles about fire ants in hay. In all our years of doing this, though, I've never had a single trainer message me, call me about a horse being bitten by hay. All the vets I've spoke to have never seen it. Everyone we've dealt with, never heard of it. So it's just that misinformation, I suppose, or misrepresentation of the risk, where for us doing it every day, if we're not seeing it, I don't really see where the risk is. 24 years of sending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of bales annually around this country, there's no spread, nothing linked to it. There's no reports from trainers with $20 million horses ringing up of things like this. But these people, they want you to comply, and farmers like Donnie here comply and do everything right just to have them right articles like that saying it's not worth the risk. So even the complying farmers are being betrayed by biosecurity the way they portray it in the media. I'd like people to understand, out of all the farmers in this community and all their years of experience, if none of them have been bitten while loading hay, if in the last 24 years there's no outbreaks linked directly to professionally grown fodder being transported around this country, and keep in mind millions of tonnes get transported around this country yearly, if this country isn't infested, hay is a low risk, professionally made hay. This isn't just paddock grass that somebody's randomly come across and bailed up. This is professionally grown market-specific feed. So the risk, in my eyes, with all the years of experience, is very minimal. I would like to know who's portraying hay as such a high risk, and why the narrative keeps getting put in the media that hay is a high risk when there's no evidence really to back it up. 24 years of carting hay around this country, if they were in the hay, I think we'd see a lot more outbreaks. We've been through a few major droughts where hay's gone right down to Victoria, up into the Northern Territory, up to Cairns, out to nearly the centre of Australia, and no outbreaks. No one ringing up reporting being bitten while handling that hay. We went to that meeting held by the fire ant program at Marmar Creek. One of the compliance officers said in his 25 years in the job, he's only seen one case where a fire ant nest was built in a shed against a bale of hay. So in 25 years, one nest, but yet we'll go and fine people for not doing a perimeter spray because of what we found, one nest in 25 years. It doesn't make any sense. They said that, there are reports of people being bitten while loading hay, but didn't have the evidence to show us that night. And when we talk to hundreds of farmers and none of them have been bitten, kind of hard to believe in professionally grown hay. We agree that there are pests that need to be eradicated. Unfortunately, I believe at 880,000 hectares, eradication is impossible at this point. If you continue on the same path of working against landholders, we need to get away from this top-down compliance approach and start working with stakeholders. As professional farmers in this industry, you have an invested interest in biosecurity. As I said earlier, you don't want to be sending contaminated produce anywhere around this country. So if we can work with landholders, I think you'll have a lot better result of trying to manage this problem.
There are two key methods being used by the NFAEP to attempt to eradicate the fire ants: direct injection of poison into a nest which has been identified, and the spread of baits, either from helicopters or by hand by NFAEP teams on the ground. The baits are being spread across all areas within the program's eradication treatment zones, regardless of whether or not any fire ants are present. These zones are drawn by placing a 5-kilometre radius around any nest which is found. If fire ants are present on the land being baited, the baits are taken by the ants back to the nest. But where no fire ants are present, the baits may be taken by other native ants or eaten by other wildlife, as the baits used are not fire ant specific. These facts are confirmed by experts in this field. Dr. Joshua King, a professor from the University of Central Florida, is an expert in fire ant eradication. He has written an open letter specifically addressing how the NFAEP is being managed in Australia. Dr. King and his research group have one of the most active, continuously US federally funded research programs in the world, with the specific aims of understanding the biology and ecology of fire ants and how fire ants interact with species in the ecosystems they invade. He brings decades of experience with real-world interactions with fire ants in a variety of natural and human-modified environments. Dr. King points out that no eradication program has ever succeeded in preventing fire ant establishment and spread over larger areas and longer time spans. He then goes on to point out that attempts at eradication and prevention of further invasions by fire ants have not only failed, but the very actions taken to eliminate the fire ant ultimately hastened its establishment and spread. Yet despite these warnings from an expert in fire ant eradication and the experience of farmers and other Australians whose fire ant-free properties have been baited, the NFAEP continues to broad bait over large areas where there are no fire ants, such as over hay farms in the Lockyer Valley. Dr. King further goes on to say that of particular concern is that the widespread and prophylactic use of toxic broadcast baits may impact non-target ants, that is, other native ants, as none of the bait products in use are fire ant specific. He says that reducing the native ant communities has repeatedly been shown to be a factor in hastening, not slowing, the invasion of fire ants, as the fire ants are especially good at moving into the nests left vacant by the native ants. He also warns that the potential for other non-target impacts on aquatic and terrestrial arthropods and wildlife is not trivial. So in summary, Dr. King says there seems to be little justification for a prophylactic baiting program that has great potential for non-target impacts and that may, in fact, hasten the establishment of fire ants over time. Dr. King's warnings do seem to be supported by what farmers have witnessed on the ground.
I'm still very perplexed about the bait, the actual bait product. Now, it says in the #1 restraint on the label, do not use pyroxene distance fire ant bait as a precautionary measure. So does that mean a helicopter that's flying around the countryside doing hundreds of acres in a matter of hours with the bait, is that precautionary? My understanding, that bait's only viable for around 2 days. So it's only, so if a fire ant or fire ants in more than, if they're not there in under 2 days and then take it back to a nest, it's a waste, complete waste. Say 4 years ago, when the helicopter baiting program was getting into full swing, there was no mention or sightings of fire ants in this Moreton Vale district. Certainly in the last 18 months, there's been several nests spotted in that same district. Is this aerial baiting program effective? Is it actually working towards what the department told us that and the government, that they want to eradicate the fire ants? Now, we all hope that is the case, but I'm not seeing that for myself. They seem to be, since baiting has been undertaken, they seem to be spreading. The ants seem to be spreading and there's more nest sightings. I spoke to one of the fire ant program team guys, young guy, last week, and he was working on the neighbour's property, and I said to them, did you find any fire ant nests? And they said yes. And I said, what do you do normally when you find a nest? Oh, we broadcast bait over that nest. For me, the right thing to do in that circumstance would be to immediately treat that nest with the liquid insecticide to actually, make sure that nest is going to be knocked out. So, and I mean, talking to a local agronomist, and we've been speaking about, fire ants and what happens when they're disturbed. A lot of the nests that get disturbed, the ants that have wings actually come to the surface and fly away. So just using the corn grit bait is not going to stop them from flying away. The only way you'll stop them is to quickly treat them with the liquid insecticide.
As professionals in the industry and acting like the eyes, I suppose, for your customers, you have a invested interest in supplying a good product. You have an invested interest in biosecurity. If we were sending products that weren't up to scratch or contaminated with weeds or fire ants, you'd definitely be getting complaints from horse trainers, produce shops, cattle stations, anybody dealing with the hay. Their staff would be getting bitten, the landowners would be getting bitten, they'd have infestations on their property. Your whole business is built on a reputation of supplying quality products. So if you were sending anything that was less than perfect or contaminated, you wouldn't stay in business very long. We've supplied some trainers that have horses worth between 20 and 30, 40 million dollars. If we sent them a bale of hay with fire ants in it and it done that to their horse's face, don't you think they'd be suing us? Never happened. 24 years on, sending hundreds of thousands of bales down to these people. Never seen this. But this is what I'm talking about, the way it's portrayed. So this is in regards to when a truck driver was trying to take hay from Boona out to Quilpie, and they were trying to shut it down, saying they didn't want hay from a contaminated area. So they write up this article, put a photo like that in, that I've never seen a horse like that from fire ants in hay. And a representative of a biosecurity officer, Rachel Trey, said the spread of fire ants to the west would be catastrophic to the agriculture and border economy. It's not worth the risk to supply fodder sourced within the red imported fire ant exclusion zone, Ms. Shea said.
Rules, regulations, restrictions, obligations, fees and fines have been put in place by the NFAEP and various government bodies without consulting the farmers who are impacted. As a result, those making and enforcing the rules are doing so without an understanding of how the farmers run their business, how they grow their crops and prepare their products for sale, and how they already manage a range of pests on the land to comply with their biosecurity obligations. Why is it that those with the most vested interest in managing the fire ants, the farmers, many of whom come from generations of farming families and who know best how to manage their crops and produce, are not being consulted?
I do believe the government is trying to manage the risk. I just don't think they've taken the right approach in how they've handled it. They relied on the wrong kind of information rather than talking with landholders and seeing for themselves how this operation's run and how we manage our businesses. They just have an assumption of what they think it's run like. When we met with program officers, they were under the assumption that all fodder's the same, that a bale of straw is the same as a bale of prime lucerne. It's not the case at all. There's different ways things are produced and handled.
This will be disturbed that's 5 or 6 days out of the month that it's disturbed, just from mow and raking and bale. And then if we spray it, they will not, some of the chemicals we use probably take out fire ants, so the fire ants can't live in here. Chlorophos used to be, it's on a short list at the moment, or laws ban. It used to be on a recommended label for fire ants. You could treat around your perimeters, around your sheds and that with it. But they've decided to take that one away and we've got to use something else. But everybody uses that to control Heliothis. So while we're controlling Heliothis, in my opinion, we're controlling the fire ants in your lucerne paddock. So that comes down to that's our question. Why are we being criticised or put on the back burner to making out like we're not doing the right thing?
Farmers that can't sell their products because the containment zones changed. I've got farmers that were worried that their hay got baited while it was in the drying process, and then it took 2 months to get a response on whether that hay was baited before he felt it was free to sell.
The day of the baiting, the McDermott helicopter just turned up out of the blue. It's got the broadcasting bait tanks on the side of it. So it's pretty distinctive. The only notification that I received was about a week prior. So on the day I had no contact. Very alarming, the fact that I knew that, you know, putting the bait out on that particular day, that I had hay curing in the paddock, and straight away I'm thinking, well, you know, that's a terrible situation for us. Then I actually rang the fire ant program. I think it was the Brisbane number, and that always takes about, if you're lucky, 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get through to actually speak to someone. And then they said, oh, we'll contact the aerial team. So I guess that means the people that are running the helicopter program. And I said, well, we've actually got hay out in the paddock on our home farm as well. So I said, I definitely don't want any broadcasting of bait on that farm today for the same reason. So thankfully, they didn't bait on this side of the road, on this paddock. Otherwise, I would have had 2 paddocks worth of hay that I wouldn't have been able to sell with a clear conscience. It was raised at the meeting in Brisbane, and I think it took about another 3-4 weeks before we got to the final outcome, and it says that they weren't broadcasting bait over the paddock, so that's their aerial records of the helicopter in question.
Farmers like Wayne, on his own, he was getting no results. When we worked together, it still took 2 months to try and get the information required, because all we were worried about is if it had been directly baited and there was chemical residue left on that hay as it was drying, if we sold that to somebody with stud cattle or something like that and it affects them, who's liable? It's not going to be the government, it'll come back on us. So then our insurance or our farm, our reputation all takes a hit. All we wanted was simple information that could have been provided the same day, because that's digitally uploaded, would have been available to send that day or the next day. There was no need for it to take 2 months. So back in 2023, when I requested a meeting with our local member and a few hay producers, the fire ant team was in attendance as well. We were given an hour to try and discuss the impacts, the solutions. Like, we've identified a problem, but we've come with a solution too. Given an hour to try and explain it, and then heard nothing for 2 years. And when I was seeing more and more farmers severely being affected and the perimeters getting bigger and bigger, more people getting looped in and being affected, I requested another meeting, which took two or 3 months to try and get, and they gave me an hour. We drove an hour and a half into Brisbane, into the CBD, paid $78 in parking fees to be given a 1 hour meeting where somebody wanted to just sit there and talk about how the chemical's safe and that they'd eat it by the spoonful, rather than listening to this accreditation proposal, rather than listening to the impacts that were brought to our attention when we held that town hall meeting. So when I found out they were stopping trucks at the border, turning them around if they didn't have the right paperwork, firstly I tried to go find the paperwork they wanted, and that was a nightmare. You'd get referred from Queensland to New South Wales to Queensland. So I requested a meeting with my local LNP member to sit down, and we organised that meeting with some representatives from the fire ant program and discuss the impacts that this could have, how we don't really see the risks that they're portraying. We recommended an accreditation process where farmers can do an online or in-person training course, have their farm inspected and how they produce their products, store them, how it's transported. We invited them out to come and have a look at this program. And 2 years later, no one's taken me up on that invitation. No policies are being changed, nothing to support us. So recently we were made aware of a farmer that done their perimeter spray in January. Then we had Cyclone Alfred. So we had 200-300 mil of rain. We were having 50-kilometre winds out here in March when it was due to be done again. Now, this farmer, just keep in mind, they carry bait shakers in every tractor in their farm ute on quad bikes, so that if they are around their paddock and they come across something, they can treat it then and there. Anyway, this farm got audited 6 weeks after they were due for their perimeter spray. And due to the cyclone and that, they hadn't done it because on the chemical label it says not to be used if there's excess runoff or wet ground, windy weather, things like that. And rather than just go, well, you know what, this farm has been compliant for so long, they obviously do really try, all their paperwork's good. No, they decided to issue them I think it was $1,160 infringement, even though weather conditions didn't permit it. And rather than work with them and be a little bit understanding, they want to issue more fines on top of the already expensive compliant cost. We had another farmer where the round bales were left out in the paddock for longer than 24 hours because after it was baled, and this was just straw, we got a lot of rain. So the black soil is notorious for being boggy when it's wet. So you wouldn't drive anything on it when it's wet because it just makes a mess of your paddocks. So anyway, they noticed that the round bales had sat out in the paddock for longer than 24 hours, straight away infringement. And they said, oh, if you had called us and told us, we wouldn't have issued this. Rather than just have a little bit of understanding and people are trying to do the right thing. Like, these aren't repeat offenders breaking the rules all the time. These are just people that got caught out by bad weather and their first go-to thing is let's just fine them, make their life even harder, cost them even more money. It really makes people not want to work with the program.
That's there. If people hear that, there'd be people around that would say, well, why bother? Why bother even telling them where the fire ants are? And that's what you don't want. You want people to ring them and say, well, we've got fire ants, can you eradicate it? Or can you bring us chemical that we don't have to cough up everything? We don't mind doing it. And
I think that's the problem at the moment, the way they conduct themselves is you wouldn't want to ring up and say, hey, I found a fire ant nest on my property, because it's just going to impact you a lot more. Where with the accreditation idea, even if you have one, you can ring up, yes, I have had one, I've treated it, it's been dealt with, continue on. Like, very minimal risk in approaching it that way where it's stakeholder-led. I think you'll get a lot better results. You'll get a lot more compliance. You'll get people happy to work in more with the program rather than being too scared to make that phone call, worried about, am I going to cop an infringement? Am I going to have my life turned upside down even more? In their eyes, just from my opinion, they believe eradication is still possible. I think if you've had a program running for 24 years and they've continued to spread from the Port of Brisbane up to 880,000 hectares, they've spread to Perth, they've spread up to Moranbah as recent. I think that's why they've taken the approach they have, is because in their mind it's still achievable to eradicate them. Where at what cost to landholders? We held a meeting a couple of months ago and we had 30 hay producers in that meeting. We estimated the cost to them, just the 30, was in the tens of millions of dollars. And out here in the Lockyer Valley, you'd have at least 250, 300 farmers that are all being affected by the way this is managed or by the restrictions placed on them. So to send hay over the border, they say that you need a plant health certificate. So we've got to pay somebody to come down, inspect our produce, issue us a certificate to say that it's clean and you can send it over the border now with these restrictions. So the inspections during ordinary business hours, that's the cost, charged in 15-minute increments. Issuing of a biosecurity certificate, nearly $60. Come down to out of hours or weekends, up to $401. Application for accreditation, $355. Just added fees on top of what we're already doing.
That expense there, if we loaded 2B doubles every week, well, that's $700 every time they come down to inspect it. So there's $1,400 gone out of our profit margin, which is very little at the moment, the way everything is set up and expenses. So we're making plenty of money, we wouldn't worry, but it's just so hard for the young ones now. If you haven't got your property paid for and can't pass it on to your family in a sensible way, they won't last, they'll go broke.
So there were some farmers that apparently were allowed to sell over the border. Once Cyclone Alfred hit and there was reports of rafting fire ants, they shut the border down, so even those farmers couldn't do it. And I don't know about you, but water flows downhill. We're uphill from the Tweed. So rafting ants didn't affect us, and that was down at Logan. And they shut the border down for even those farmers for what? Well, still, as far as I know, you're still not allowed to.
Yeah, still not allowed to.
According to their website, you're still not allowed to.
So we have to actually, with those costs, if we were to pass that on, there's no way.
You price yourself out of the market.
Out of the market. People just won't pay the price anymore.
When I referred to them closing the border down about rafting fire ants, they held a Senate inquiry, and they stated in here that the risk of rafting and movement of fire ants as a result of the cyclone. So the actual risk going to other jurisdictions is very low, is what they stated in that Senate inquiry.
Yet we're being penalised.
And yet
continuously.
Stakeholders are the ones that are being costed everything. The people that write this collect their paycheck every week. They just cost us ours. Who pays our bills? Who puts food on the table for our families when they continually do this? Based on what evidence? Our customers down there want a fresh product. So if we bail this weekend, they want it on a truck within a couple of days and sent down to them. If that happens on a weekend, we've got to pay these big fees for weekend rates, or we've got to ring up and wait for a call back, or wait till they have an available inspector to come down and inspect it. If that takes a week, your prime product is now a shedded product in the eyes of some people. It's not that fresh lucerne that people are chasing. In 2023, when they first started making a big deal on the media and newspapers about it and closing the border down, the fire ant containment zone ended probably about 15 kilometres from here, just near the Gatton University. Since then, it's now spread probably a further 15 kilometres to Grantham. So impacted all the businesses in between there as an extension. We've got cases where farmers that were outside of the zone had a shed full of hay, 5,000 bales of hay. The zone's changed. Those 5,000 bales of hay, he's been told he's not allowed to send off his property. That has an estimated cost of $100,000 to that landholder, unable to sell his product. Never a fire ant on his property, just the zone's changed.
People that are outside of the fire ant area, they don't want to, they're frightened that we've all got fire ants straight away, so that they don't want to buy the product from here. They'll buy it from just on the outside of perimeter of the fire ant barrier, which is like Mergen and those places, where we did have people that had come down. That was where your second grade hay, you get cattle farmers come down. They'd come down in their own trucks, and yeah, and that's where it's all fallen down. It's perpetrated that everybody in the Lockyer Valley's got fire ants, and we are a very low risk, in my opinion.
And like now, you've got affected farmers down in Victoria that are screaming out for hay. There's hay up here, but we can't move it because of where we're located and the way it's been portrayed. They think that they're going to contaminate their properties. It's not the case at all. But unfortunately for them, they don't know any better, so their livestock misses out on quality feed that we could be shifting.
You got some racehorse industry, like you got 50 million, $60 million horses. So it's a very big industry that we used to supply, but now we can't. So now we've got to try and move our product somewhere else. And you got boundaries up north. There's a client I was talking to. He maintains his where he's outside the fire ant area. Their clients, some of them used to come to the Lockyer Valley. Their productivity's gone through the roof because they're outside the fire ant area, because nobody wants to come to the Lockyer Valley and buy lucerne off of us. But we've got the way it's being portrayed, and we've got no fire ants. Years ago, we'd stack 2,000 bales of hay at night time. The semi-trailer would come in the morning, very tired after stacking it all half the night, and stack it onto a semi-trailer. And I've never known anybody to be bitten in my whole lifetime. Myself,
the farmers that I've spoken with, millions of bales we would have stacked by hand, and never once have we been bitten while loading it. There are people in Boona, like I do feel for them. Like there's a lady down there that has a horse adjustment property. She says it's really affecting her business because obviously you've only got so many acres to divide horses into, and when there's a heap of nests, and horses are getting bitten by them, but it isn't by the feed. So that's where I was saying to you, like, I do believe that they are a risk, but the risk isn't in the feed that they're restricting, and that's just where we come from because that's our livelihood. In the last 24 years, there's no outbreaks linked directly to professionally grown fodder being transported around this country. And keep in mind, millions of tonnes get transported around this country yearly. If this country isn't infested, hay is a low risk, professionally made hay. So the risk, in my eyes, with all the years of experience, is very minimal. I've spoken to people that have been bitten and they've said it's a bit worse than a green ant bite, but give it an hour and you forget it's there. But it depends on the person at the end of the day. Everyone reacts to bites differently. Like, there can be adverse effects to it, but it depends on you. You could feed this whole country peanut butter and only 2.7% of the country is going to have a reaction to it, aren't they? So there's always a risk, but I don't think it's the way they've portrayed it. I don't think fire ants are going to invade your home and eat your baby like they make out. It's extremely frustrating. It's costing livelihoods. I talk to a lot of farmers every day and you're seeing it in their faces, stressing about how they're going to pay their bills. Like, these guys don't get an income every week. There's no paycheck coming in every week. They get paid for what they produce off their land and what they can sell. The moment you misrepresent that or restrict their trade, who pays their bills? Who pays the finance on equipment? Who pays the farm off? Farmer suicides are the second highest in this country. And when you're robbing people of their livelihoods and putting unfair burden and strain on the way they conduct their businesses without consultation, without working with them, it really worries me that farmers in this community are going to add to those statistics when they feel they've got no other option, when they're facing bankruptcy, when they can't put food on the table for their families. I put forward an accreditation scheme that would support farmers and support biosecurity in this country. Nobody's taken me up on that. Nobody's come out to see how we operate and how we manage our farms. How is that supporting a small business? You know, I'm a single income family of 4. My wife and my children rely on me to provide and pay the bills and put food on the table for them. Where's that money supposed to come from? Am I supposed to just close my business down and go work for someone again and give up on the Australian dream of having your own business? It sure feels that way with the way it's being managed.
Even though it states on the NFAEP website, we can help you self-manage fire ants on your land with free treatment products and support until June 2026, the farmers are not getting the support they need. In fact, they are being ignored when viable solutions have been proposed. What Jake and other farmers in the Lockyer Valley want and need is implementation of Jake's proposed producer-led accreditation scheme for professionally grown hay, which is based on training, certification and on-farm inspections, a revision of the pest risk assessment underpinning fire ant policy to separate lucerne and other high-value products from mulch, sugarcane and straw, public promotion of clean, low-risk fodder to rebuild bioconfidence, visits from MPs to understand the real-world impacts of NFAEP policies and practices on the farmers and their businesses, lift a long-standing ban on fodder from Queensland's fire ant zones imposed by the New South Wales government, and fair enforcement of Biosecurity Act laws and use of officer discretion for genuine compliance.
I think if you have a fire and infestation on your property, it can affect your livestock in certain ways. I don't think shutting the country down to manage it's the answer though. We need to work with landholders and you'll have a lot better result. Like I said, nobody wants fire ants here. We all want to eradicate them. People want a choice on how they manage their properties.
This is an exception. This is a very important issue for a lot of farmers. And, you know, we're part of the local economy and we matter. And so do our families.
Well, generational farmers like Wayne and Donnie that we spoke to earlier, it's their generations that have built this valley and given it the reputation that these elected members get to claim as theirs. But it's these guys that have put the hard work in building that. It's them ones that are crippling it.
Our industry is being castigated and condemned, and we weren't the group that allowed the fire ants into the Port of Brisbane. It was Customs. And then subsequent to that, Biosecurity Queensland have sat on their hands for God knows how many years before they realised that, oh heck, we got a real problem here. Our industry is now bearing the brunt. You know, loss of doing business, loss of markets, you know, the aggravation, the mental stress, the financial stress, and yeah, it's obviously getting harder and more difficult. It's not improving, not yet anyway.
I've sent 3 emails to my local member proposing this accreditation scheme again, reminding him, explaining how it'd work and the benefits of it, how it would benefit both landholders and biosecurity efforts. 3 emails, no response. It's just not acceptable. How is that working with stakeholders? How is that representing your constituents? It's not right. And we're the ones bearing the cost of it. While they're getting promotions and bigger paychecks, we're losing what we've spent generations trying to build. So it's pretty disappointing that our current LNP government, the Christopher government, claim to support small businesses and claim that farmers are the backbone of this country. Yet when you approach them or their representatives, like our local member Jim McDonald, put a proposal forward like a producer-led accreditation scheme. But this right here gives people the power to still trade freely, but maintain your biosecurity obligations. And it takes a big hassle out of how farmers manage their property. But 2 years on, after promoting this, I've heard nothing. There's been no consultation. Nobody's come out to see how we operate and how we manage things. And it really asks the question, to what benefit are we putting such restrictions on farmers? Why are we ruining small businesses and livelihoods? Who's it benefiting? Because it's not benefiting our community. If anything, it's affecting it severely. You take the farming community out of this valley, and that's what this valley is known for.
Farmers are indeed the backbone of Australia. It is time to give the hay farmers in the Lockyer Valley a fair go. Tony Perrott, your role is to fulfil the will of the people. This film outlines the will of farmers in the Lockyer Valley who you have been elected to serve. It is time for you to meet personally with the farmers, to understand their businesses and work with them to put a program in place that does not destroy farming operations which have been the backbone of this country for generations. It has been well over a year since the April 2024 Senate inquiry on red imported fire ants in Australia reported that reluctance to consult and involve industry in the response can only be seen as a disadvantage, given the varied and in-depth on-the-ground knowledge and experience of the agricultural, environment and pest sectors. The report also recommended, among other actions, that you investigate alternate models for delivery to reduce bureaucratic process. It is well past time for you to personally answer the calls of the farmers, visit their farms, understand their businesses, and agree in consultation with the farmers a workable program that does not restrict or destroy their lives and livelihoods. To support our farmers, please send this call to action to Tony Perrott. Don't delay or wait until the fire ant treatment zones reach your property. Make your voice heard now. Thank you.
There we go. I think we're back, got the audio back. So for those of you who've joined us for the nearly 2 hours, we thank you for watching, obviously, the documentary on this stream. And I hope that you got a lot out of those and really appreciate the work that, that Debra Leigh's put into those documentaries, which are very, very powerful. So thank you. But the key message from me is, don't on-share this stream. I'd rather you go to the Global Truth Network platforms to be able to share directly from there. And they can be found. I'll bring them up again so people can see them again before I have Debra come back in to just give us a bit of an overview of a bit of a call to action from her. But please go to the Global Truth Network Rumble site and share the videos, the documentaries straight from that site, if you can. So thanks, Debra, and yeah, some final words from you. Very compelling documentaries there, and I hope a lot of people got a lot of benefit from watching them as well.
Yes, thank you, Mark. And I guess the final words from me are to reinforce what you've just said about sharing this film. Unfortunately, a lot of people, that when I first mention the words fire ants to them, they're not even sure what I'm talking about. They're like, what sort of ants? What? So that they've not even really heard much about this program. And sadly, what people have heard through the mainstream media is the government's, what the government is saying about the program, and that, like other programs we've seen over the last few years, is all about fear. It's all about, oh, these ants are going to take over and ruin our lives, and the sting's really terrible, and they'll just a lot of fear, basically, and how it's going to destroy our way of life, how it's going to destroy business, it's going to destroy animals on properties, etc., etc. But as I said, all I've been able to find so far from real world people experiencing the impacts of the program in place is an awful lot of not just harm, but their lives are being destroyed. Their lives are being destroyed not by the fire ants, but by the program to eradicate them. And as you would have seen in both films, the experts in the US who have the funding to do the research are telling us that what we're doing is actually spreading them, not eliminating them. And they're also telling us that it's pretty much impossible to eradicate them. We have to learn to live with them. And that's what Trevor said in his film as well, that he sees that just like COVID, we are going to have to learn to live with them. And it won't be much different to what they do in other places like Texas, where if you do have them on your property, you go and buy something to treat them, as you do with other pests such as termites, for example. So I really believe that's where we need to head as well. And I'm not saying the government shouldn't play a role in helping people and supporting them, but they certainly need to reassess what's been done. And it's not just the people on the ground saying that. Their own internal inquiries, Senate inquiries, and there was another inquiry even before that, have said the same. But they hold these inquiries, they point out all the same things that the people are trying to tell them, and they do nothing. They just keep going. So this is the only way we will stop this and have this reassessed and put something more sensible in place that is not causing more harm than good, will be if the people educate themselves on what's actually happening and on the truth about the fire ants, and not the propaganda that we're hearing in the mainstream media. And I hope that my films can help people to learn the truth and learn some facts, and then do their own research to confirm it, and any other research they feel they need to do. But most importantly, the people need to write to their ministers and MPs and representatives, and that can be at every level, council, because all the different levels of government are involved here. They're not just poisoning properties of individuals, they're poisoning all of, public areas, forests, parks, all sorts of areas. So every level of government is involved here, and every level of government has a responsibility to protect the health and safety of the people. And they certainly are not doing that in this case. So please, people, share the film, educate yourselves, and please write to your representatives at whatever level or all levels to let them know that we don't accept what's going on. We don't consent to the poisoning of our beautiful southeast Queensland and our private properties, and we need this to stop. So please watch the film, share the film, and write the letters or make the phone calls. That's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
And a great message. And if people want to be put in contact with anybody to assist or do anything and, work together as a group, they can obviously reach out to you, I guess. But also there is a couple of Facebook sites. I think one is Stop the Toxic Fire Ant Program, which has got nearly 10,000 odd members on there. So if people do want to find out more or get involved, they can find out more there, but also via Debra through Global Truth Network on Rumble, on the Substack as well. There'll be options there to message as well. So look, key message is to spread the word far and wide, directly from those documentaries, share them on, talk about it, start the conversation, and let's get the word out there and get some politicians and bureaucrats accountable. It seems like they can just continue to ignore the plight of people, and our farmers are the backbone of this country and need us, and everybody should try and step up in whatever capacity they can. So Debra, again, I thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing more coming from you. And I want to reiterate that if anybody knows any philanthropists or a philanthropist might be watching that sees great value in the work that Debra and her team are doing, please reach out to Debra to see if you can support and contribute in some way, shape or form. So thanks again, Debra, for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate you having me on.
No worries at all. And as usual, I finish my programs with a little bit of a country, a bit of blues, Christian blues, and so I'll be playing that on the exit now. So I hope everybody has a great day, a blessed time. And today's one is Matthew in Blues, The Garden Shook. So hopefully you enjoy that. Take care, Debra.
Thank you. Bye.
He stepped in the garden, the moon hung low. Leaves held their breath as the pain began to grow. He told his friends, stay close and pray. But sleep came heavy and drifted them away. He fell to the ground, his voice like rain. Let this cup pass if there's another way. But deeper still, the vow rang true. Not my will, but yours to do. And the garden shook with every tear. The weight of the world drew heaven near. He bore the dark that none could see, so light could reach you and me. The silence roared as the sweat turned red. The angels watched while the prayers were said. 3 times he cried, 3 times alone, while the ones he loved slept like stone. He stood and faced what love must mean. A kiss would come and change and be. But still he walked, no turning back. The Lamb had chosen the narrow track. And the garden shook with every tear. The weight of the world drew heaven near. He bore the dark that none could see, so light could reach you and me. The ground still holds the memory deep of the night the Savior chose not to sleep.